Hi, this is Scotty Johnson, and you're watching Coffee Talk. Are you listening to it or watching it?
They're both.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Welcome to all of you. I'm Kim Perlak. I'm the chair of the guitar department, and this is another coffee talk. And today, as usual, we have Cheryl Bailey with us, assistant chair,
Hello, everybody.
and Ian Steed, our senior coordinator.
Hey all.
And our special guest is Professor Scotty Johnson. Hey, Scotty.
Hi.
Thanks
Hi,
for
how are
being
you?
here. So,
Kim, I
Scotty,
like you've got your WGBX kind of voice going with the coffee. This is great.
ooh,
Kind of like public radio thing going. That was some voiceover work
little
happening here. Very
calm.
nice.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much. Yeah, I think like calming and informative
I
is
could use
what
a
we're
little of
going
that right now.
for,
I
right?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think we all could use a little of that right now. Oh my god.
yeah, this is true.
Hey, Scotty, what do you have? What are you drinking this morning in terms of coffee? What do you got?
I happen to be the proud owner of a Nespresso machine, Virtuo, much like the one in the office, which and I'm glad you brought that up because I'm having trouble finding the coffee pods in the office. Is there a hiding place or have we run out?
Yes,
Do you
I
want to put
have
some of
a
your best people on this so we can get to the bottom of it? Or
well, if you don't tell anyone, ha ha ha. I have a special stash and you are welcome to it. And
okay,
so Ben knows
okay,
where it is. You can
okay.
ask
I'll ask
Ben.
Ben. Okay, he's there.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's the blue ones too, which are the
Oh,
I
what?
love
Yeah. What's that?
the ones.
Adagio? Or I know most of them.
Yeah, they
Um,
you have to be careful with them because they're a little high octane. I had two one day and I came into a class on improvisation. I was like, "Okay, everybody, here we go. What do you want to play?
yeah.
Who's playing? You sound great." I had to really they're really tough. How many of those do you have? Can you handle a day?
Um, I really I do one caffeinated one in the morning. That
Hmm.
isn't an option. I can't function without it.
Hmm.
But then throughout the day, I switch to decaf. I have decaf pods that I do throughout the day. Um,
Mm.
just because I'll have trouble sleeping if I drink all day, but I like the flavor of it all day. So I do one.
Yeah.
The other danger about that machine is there's a barcode on that thing. It's pretty high tech. So they come in different sizes. There's the espresso shot traditional kind of thing. Then there's like the mug size, but
Yep.
then there's like the Largo, Grando, whatever it's called. And so it doesn't know what size cup you put in there. So I did that by mistake. My wife bought the large one. I put a regular one and I walked away from it. I came back. It was like a waterfall of frothy goodness all going onto the floor. And my dog is licking it up and he doesn't need caffeine. But so there, it's kind of an art. You got to be careful with the pods.
That's true. It is an art. It's good though. It was definitely one of our good improvements in the office, I think, to
Yeah,
get
it was like right before the break too, and we kind of
yeah.
didn't really get to enjoy it, but I'm enjoying it now. I was telling Cheryl, I kind of like how quiet it is around the office these days because I can, the machine's all to myself. It's kind of quiet, no line at the copy
Mhm.
machine. It's been kind of nice, but that's on me. That's maybe a
Well,
problem
that's
for me,
right.
but
Like, I think it's important for people to know that we have opened the school, right? So we're still we're having this conversation still in the pandemic where we're hybrid, and most of our
hmm
classes and lessons are remote on Zoom, and then there are a handful of special classes and lessons that are on campus. And Scotty, you've been going in. So
hmm
you have had kind of, and Cheryl is in right now. That's right. Cheryl, unmute and tell them what uh, what it's like over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, it's mellow, and I'm in the office, my office here, and I think this is going to be a really powerful experience for students here because they're getting almost like a small music school experience
Hmm.
where they can really hang and bond and play music together. So,
I
I'll be curious moving forward, when we come back in the fall and it's busy, what their thoughts are on it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then at the same time, because so many people are remote, we're doing things like this. Like we've moved our coffee hang to be on Zoom and on a podcast. And so we're still going to have all of those things too. So hopefully we'll keep the best of both modalities when we go back. Um, so Scotty,
Do you
like,
think we could be hybrid in the next semester? Do you think,
I think
to some
so.
degree,
I think
September?
until all the students really feel like they can come safely back, I think we will be hybrid. And then moving forward, you never know. Maybe there are some instances where that could be an option. We'll just have to see how it goes. We're really just feeling it out. I mean, we're no one's ever run a music school. No one's ever run Berklee in a pandemic before. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're all kind of working it out, you know. So, Scotty, one thing that might be on your mind as you walk in the halls these days that we always ask people is, what were your first days of Berklee like when you first came? What do you remember about that experience?
Um, I remember expecting a lot more instructions, and okay, so uh, basically, Larry kind of walked me to my room, gave me the key, and said, "Have a nice day. I'll talk to you soon." I was like, "Okay, but where's the briefing? What do I do? What happens? What about D Dorian? Do I need to talk about that? What's going on? The modes, or what do I talk about?" But then it clicked. I'm like, that's the way it should be. They hired me because I'd done some things, and just bring what you have to the party. We're not looking for a mold here. You're the number 27 to snap the mold. Bring what you bring to this place. And I just was always honest. And to be honest too, I mean, now I remember because I had a kind of a rough teacher in college. You know, I'm not gonna mention his name, but he was a strict guy. This is University of Miami. I didn't go to Berklee. Um, he was a tough cookie. And I thought, well, that's how you be a college professor. That you have to be that way. So I thought, well, I better do that. So I was kind of like, you better practice. And I could see the students were looking at me like, what are you talking about? This is not my little voice, my little whiny voice going, you better, when I said, that's not working. I'm just going to be honest. And I will never bring negativity to music. Music is here for the opposite of that, to take us out of that stuff. The world is full of that stuff. I didn't want to bring it to music. Now, that being said, sometimes it's good to get your butt kicked every once in a while. And I think I benefited from that guy being strict at times because I was the cocky kid, college kid who thought he was good. And he had other news for me. And I think it helped me. But truthfully, I'm not that person. I'm not a negative person. And maybe about some things, but not guitar, not music, not being a professional musician. The gift of playing music throughout your life is not something I want to attach. You better do this, or no, man. You should want to do this. I want to do this. We all do. I think we all have that in common. So that's I figured that out like in the first semester. You know, the fake strict guy wasn't. No one was buying it anyway. So I think you're either born that way. You know what I mean? You're strict, or you're just kind of, you know, you just do what you got to do. It's music. So that was my thing. But I was expecting instructions like this is what we need to do, and this is what this is how you do it. This is the Berklee way. And the Berklee way is just bring what you have to the party, and which uh, I think I've done. I think I've done over the years. I'm always honest, and I take my real world experiences into the room with me. Um, I put more emphasis on that than exercises in books and things like that, because you can get that anywhere. And I think a big part of my job is listening. Listen to the students. Listen to them play. Because you can't get that from a book. You can't get feedback based on what you're doing from a book. Books are great, but the book doesn't say, "Hey, you're dragging," or try this, or you sound good here, but let's work on that. That's an interactive thing that happens with a live human being, and I just listen to the students play and interact based on what they're playing. So
That's great. I have a question based on that because we know you as a player that is very diverse stylistically. Some people really know you for your rock playing. You also play in shows, and you have a jazz background as well, and you studied at Miami. And I'm wondering, when you were kind of forming your professional career and finding who you were on the guitar, What about your education like really played a role in that? And then were there some departure points? Like, did you study specific stylistic things in college and then go in a different direction as a player and in your performance career? Could you just talk about that a
Yeah,
little?
yeah. That's good. Well, the thing about Miami was, I think how many guitar faculty members are there? Is it 50 something or high 40s? Do you know?
We are
You know.
in 50s here. Yeah,
Okay. So when I was studying, I was one of 40 students.
right.
So there's a size difference. There was one teacher, maybe, and he had an assistant, and it was play jazz or go home.
Okay.
And I listened to some stuff like that, but I was more the rock guy, and I love George Benson and I love Larry Carlton. So moving towards that side of things, there was some of the whatever, you know what that is.
Mhm,
But hardcore, like opening up a real book, I didn't know what a real book was.
mhm,
So, and it wasn't like, well, I want to take the rock classes, please. Thank you. But there were no rock classes,
right.
I'll take the rock teacher, please. Nope, nope, you get this guy. Uh, and that was a challenge. And I didn't always love it, but some of it really did stick to me.
Mhm.
Stick. I didn't I didn't let it go as soon as I left school. It stayed with me. And then I played in a lot of top 40 bands. I even did this while I was at college. So I was studying. There was a scene in Miami. This was in the 80s. It was pretty crazy. Um, but I was in a top 40 band that played 6 nights a week,
Wow. Yeah.
5 sets a night, playing cover tunes. And the music at the time was, Whitney Houston, Madonna, 80s, 80s. And that was a pivotal part of my education because I was playing every single night with people, in front of people, and anything goes. And I got to say, I'm biased because I'm an 80s child, but the guitar tracks on a lot of those records are just killer. There was the funky, clean stuff. There was a solo in every song. There was a guitar. And to make it longer for the live thing, double the guitar solo. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah, let's make it longer. I'll tell you, it's a double guitar solo. Okay, let's do that.
Mhm.
So it was a great time to be a guitar player. It still is, but that music was just is. So I'm working stuff out, gear, sound, staying focused. I missed a few early classes because of it, though. To be honest, that 9 a.m. theory class took a hit. Okay,
Right.
um, but that was really pivotal for me, and it's because I needed that. I needed that. I needed to play with people over a long period of time in a very rehearsed environment to get better.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
Maybe not everyone did, but I needed it. I needed to play as much as possible,
mhm.
and it was the friends you make along the way. It's all that stuff. It's all great too. Okay, so let's continue. So that was Miami, because I tell this story a lot where sometimes you have to be patient. So I'm in California now, in my mid 20s, and there's like a blues explosion that's happening kind of in the San Francisco area at the time. And right around the time I hit 28 years old, I remember it well. I f- that was the first time I felt like, you know, I think I might have my thing here. I don't You can call it what it is, but I think I found my thing. Your voice, whatever what you strength, whatever you want to call it. And I like telling that story because 28 to a college kid is pretty darn old. So, like, if you have impatient college students who go, "I can't get this," I go, "Hey, man, I was 28 before I really kind of feel comfortable in my own skin with a guitar on. I wasn't, I was kind of playing some stuff." And what happened is, a record came out in 1988 called "Talk to Your Daughter" by Robin Ford, and that was a kind of a blues based record with some fancier guitar playing. And that was something that had eluded me. I didn't get into that in college or high school. And so I'm out in the real world now, and I'm hearing this record and go, "This is just the bomb. This is so good." Um, and I started emulating that. It really hit me hard, and I started emulating the sound, kind of very heavily influenced. Um, and it turns out I was living in the area where Robin Ford lived, and his brothers also played in the area. And I had a connection with Robin's brothers, and I auditioned for the band, and they heard me trying to sound like Robin, and they liked it because that's what they grew up playing together, and they were looking for that type of thing. Now, I'm gonna time out here. I didn't sound like Robin Ford. I'm not comparing myself to that player, but I was trying, and I was, I was. That was kind of what just what I wanted to play, and I ended up getting in that band, and we did some fantastic things. It was great. It's the first time, so it wasn't a coincidence. Around the same time, I felt like I found my thing. I started getting better gigs. I started touring. I got signed to another blues label in that Bay Area by Mike Varney, who's a kind of a shred. He also had a heavy blues label at the time, so he assembled a band with me in it, and we put out records. So I was doing that simultaneously while playing with the Ford Blues Band and touring all over Europe and traveling. The van tour, of Europe and just low budget, but loving every waking moment of it. I didn't want to sleep. It was just, at that age, I was just thrilled to be doing it. So, um, and that's kind of where I stuck. I'm still there now, in terms of like you say, what's your thing? I think it's that thing. It's that, and I call it like a West Coast blues type of thing. It's blues, but it's not straight old school. It's some other things happening in there as well. Um, and back to diversity, the theater work. When you sign up for a theater gig, you're lucky enough to be asked to do that. Everything is on the table. Everything, you're a soundtrack to a story. Anything with frets on it, you need to own to do these gigs. That includes mandolin, ukulele, banjo. I've played dulcimers. I've played a thumb piano. I mean, electric sitar. So diversity is necessity in that field because they're not going to rewrite the orchestration because you're not comfortable with the jazz thing. It doesn't work
Right.
that way. And so, and that's something I enjoy. I enjoy doing that. I say I can fake anything for 8 measures. That's kind of my little motto. I can. I know what my thing is. But when it comes time for it, but that's part of the gig is being able to cop that. Same with the Boston Pops. It could be a very jazzy guitar solo thing. It could be a rock thing with whammy bar, and I've played mandolin over there at Symphony Hall. It's a necessity. It's just like this is what you need to do if you want this gig.
And there's quite a bit
So
of
talk about
reading.
motivation to do it, right? Talk about
Right.
motivation to cultivate that, right? So
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of reading that goes into that as well. Can you talk about
yes.
how you grew in that? I mean, I'm sure that was part of your undergrad education as well, but maybe not in the same kind of way that you do it now.
Yeah, it was. We had guitar ensembles where it was 6 guitar players, and we're all reading these charts arranged. We used to have those. I think one of those file cabinets in the office has a bunch of those, right? And Tom Shimshak used to arrange a lot of those. Still there? Are they still there in that
They
office?
are still there.
Okay,
You
okay.
have them all to yourself, really, on one
Do
of
we
the.
have a guitar ensemble? Do we have a guitar ensemble that does those things? I know I don't teach one, but or do they
Um,
exist? Does Jane have one, or do we do those anymore? Or?
Mark has one, and
Oh, Mark,
Jane
great.
has one. Yeah, yeah, we
And
still do some of it.
bebop guitars.
Bebop guitars.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I learned to read, and I could not read it when I got to college, and it was humbling and frustrating. Yeah. But over the course of 4 years, I got better and better. Then after I got out of college, the gigs that I was doing didn't require any reading, so I fell off the wagon, so to speak, and I didn't, and it got rusty, didn't read at all. And then after I moved here,
Mhm.
I did a show in Vegas for a year. I have kind of a lost year in Vegas. Maybe we can talk about that some other time. I'm not sure if I want to get into that, but I did a show in Vegas. That's the first theater thing I did, and I had a great time. It was wonderful. But when I moved out here and I was teaching here, I got called out of the blue to do a theater thing last minute up in Beverly at the North Shore Music Theater, where I still work. And after I did that show, the contractor told me, he goes, yeah, well, you sounded good. There aren't a lot of rock guys that can read around here. And I thought I hadn't been out here for a long couple years, and that really surprised me. And I thought, well, about everyone here, but but I think it goes to like not everybody wants to do a theater gig. That's what it is. It's like it's some people the thought of doing 8 shows a week, the same show is like suicide, right? It isn't for me, but I thought, wow, really? And it kind of gave me a glimmer, like, wow, and it pays how much? Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to brush up on my reading. That's so I had motivation in the form of, monetary, making a living kind of thing. And as an adult, I got my reading back together. And you don't forget how to read; you just get rusty.
Right.
Same way about learning how to read. You can't work on it 6 hours on Sunday and then take 2 months off. You go, yeah, I read for 6 hours 2 months ago. You got to read a little bit. You got to do it every day, though. You got to just read. Don't practice reading. Just read something. I don't even know how you practice reading. You're either reading or you're not. Read something every day. If you can't read it well, slow it down. It's like it's not to be practiced. It's a practice of reading often. You know what I mean? Um, so that was motivation.
That's
And the
great.
biggest thing I talk about with students when it comes to reading is that in the world that I live in, over at the Pops and the theater stuff, no one cares how you read. No one cares how well you read or how accurately you read, but they know if what you're playing feels good. That's your job, is to take this ink and turn it into a human being,
Mhm.
which is not instinctive. You see this thing, it's so literal, these dots on the page. And I'm sure we've all seen it. I've seen students with nice vibratos and good fields. As soon as they start reading, they turn into robots to try to read accurately. Because this is what it says. Dot, 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 but you wouldn't want to hear that, would you? I mean, play it like you wrote it. You have to take this chart, and a good conductor will give you that instruction and say, don't. He'll never say, hey, just read that accurately, read it perfectly. They said, here's the chart. Just make it sound good, please. Make me look good when you play this ink that has no life. You don't write vibrato into a chart. You don't write slides and all the articulations that guitar has. It's limitless. It's why we all know that. If you wrote them all in, it would look like a Chinese menu or something. It would be very hard to read. It's on you to bring that to the table. So if you can read something and it feels good, it's got a pocket, maybe you add something here and there, it wasn't written in. If you go out of bounds, they'll bring it in. They'll say, yeah, just play what was written. It's not a big deal. But if you sit there and just read it perfectly and all your musicality goes out the window, that's of little to no value in the field. Maybe in a practice room that's cool, but not out there. That's not what they need from you. You know.
That's so important. I've just had this conversation with my class yesterday, and we were playing something that the students wrote, and then they were reading someone else's work in the ensemble class. And we had that instance. There was a really great blues player in there, and he read this, and the comment was, "Well, could you hear that has a blues influence?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, why don't you just play it? Like, if I said, 'Hey, that's a blues, just play it,'" and he played it, and it was stunning. It was dead on,
Hmm.
and what was really interesting, of course, is when you animate something, when you bring it to life, it solves a lot of technical problems in a way, because you're more fluid and you're breathing, and I think that's such an important aspect of reading, that you really are
Yeah.
interpreting, you're animating as you're doing it. And so, is there a way, if people haven't experienced that, how do you advise them when they're approaching something? Do you say, like, take a second and think about where this comes from, look at the title, think about what style it is? How do you, like, if I put a book in front of you for a show, what would your eyes and mind do with it before you started to play the first note that would allow you to animate it?
Okay. Well, my literal answer to that question is I would scan it, the whole thing, immediately to see if there's anything that looks really gnarly.
Mhm.
Okay, like where are the trap doors in this thing? Where are the scary little measures that have? So, and I'm pretty good at that. Okay, I think that's cool. That's cool. Ooh, what is that? And then my next question is like, what position am I going to play this? And this is getting very technical, but that's what
No,
I'm
it's
thinking,
good. Please, yeah.
because you know a silly little blues lick can be a nightmare if you're reading it in this weird position, because that's where you can read, but it wasn't meant to be played here. It was meant to be played here. So um, where do I need to play this in order to successfully pull this off and not get embarrassed on the first rehearsal? By the way, there's always a rehearsal. I mean, it's not like, okay, you show up and you do it. There's a rehearsal, and there's a reason for rehearsals. We're
Mhm.
figuring it out. Everyone is. Um, but I'm more that's maybe a layer that I really don't get to. Like, who wrote this and where did it come from? I mean, something goes in front of my eyes. I'm scanning it for the hot spots, and what position am I going to read this in? What kind of tone? That type of thing. Um,
But you
and I try
kind
to
of
bring it to life. And I'm always,
right.
my main emphasis always is time feel when I play.
Mhm.
That's number one. Fancy notes, lower on the totem pole. Whatever you play could be simple or fancy. The time feel for me is paramount. So I never want to forget. I'm going to read this thing with a good time feel, and maybe bring the experiences that I've had, and I've played other styles. So if it says jazz, it'll say archtop. So you got your jazz box. So that's going to put you in a different mode. And they're very specific. They might say needs to be played with a telly. Strat won't cut it. They want a telly for this. You bring a telly to the gig, and then you got to play it. You got to read it on a telly. That's why I have a lot of instruments because I have to. I have to buy these things because they request them. And then it turns into obsession. I'll admit to that, but that's part that's part of it. I guess I'm kind of. It's not my fault. None of this is my fault. I had to. They said I had to buy a ukulele. Um, but that's pretty much it for me. But I mean, I've done enough of these shows where I can kind of feel this is a jazz. And then also too, when this is hard to imitate in a classroom, because my theater lab, we're all just playing guitar. But when you're playing a chart with a theater orchestra, you've got a drummer who's good. You've got a
Mhm.
bass player who's good. They're playing
Right.
with you.
Mhm.
So there's that, which
Mhm.
puts everything in perspective. And that's hard to do in a classroom. We're just all reading the guitar part. It was just played by one guy, and now we're all playing it. And and I mentioned that to them too. It's the way it goes. Um, which brings up another point too. And people talk about, how do you follow the conductor and what's all with, because everyone's different and this guy goes like this and this. My answer is, if there's a drummer playing, you play to the drums, just like you're in high school. You
Mhm.
don't follow the conductor and leave the drummer somewhere else. The band sounds like crap at that point. You can't do that.
Mhm.
So the problem with that is, sometimes you have to play and there's no drummer, and then you actually have to follow the conductor, and that's rare. So
Right.
I watch the conductor always. You have to, but musically, you play with the drums. That's what you do. That's what
Mhm.
you do in music, right? You play to the drums.
Right.
You don't go, well, conductor's saying this. I don't care what you're doing. I'm following the conductor. Now you're in a different time zone. It sounds like a high school band and a bad one. So um, you have to kind of stay focused. And that's a musical thing. That's a core music thing. Play with each other. Yeah, we're all supposed to follow the conductor, but if you're playing with the drums, let the drummer worry about the cue. That's another way kind of around that,
Mhm.
uh, in that situation.
This is so great because what you're saying is there's so much more than what's on the page, right? Like you're looking
Exactly.
for clues all the time, and you're bringing all of your skills to bear. So if someone says, we absolutely have to have a telly for this, in your mind, you know what that means sonically, and you
Yeah.
probably have a good
That means
idea
it's going to
of
be played
what,
in a certain way. Yeah, it's going
right,
to be
like
played
the
a certain way
feel
because
and
it's a
the
telly. Yeah.
exactly. You kind of have that sense. If they say archtop jazz, you're already thinking like, okay, I think that means this. If
Yep.
if you don't know that yet because you're young, you're thinking of what might that mean, and that's a good thing to start investigating.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What styles of music use that type of guitar and that type of sound, and what kind of feel do they have? And then the other part is the ensemble skills. If you see that a drummer is in that book, then you have to lock in with that drummer and be able to
Hmm.
do that in the styles that are implied by the choice of instrument and by the way the thing looks when you scan it. So if this isn't something in your experience and you want to play that, you have to start to think about building those ensemble skills and those stylistic skills so that you pick up on the inferences. Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Correct. And then, if you have a strong base, a diverse base of things that you've listened to. So
Mhm.
if you don't know what that means, yeah, I know what it means for me. It means guys like um, Joe Pass,
Mhm.
Pat Martino.
Mhm.
Those are the guys that hit me hard.
Mhm.
Some of them. So I go to that place. I go, what would they kind of feel? What would that sound be like? I know I've listened to those records many thousands of times, so I know how to get that. But that's research, I guess you would call
Mhm.
that. Do your homework. And in these charts, you see references that are kind of, you got to know what they mean. One of the ones that still comes up is a la Andy Summers. Have you
Ah,
ever? Andy Summers was a guitar player in
the
Police, the
police.
band Police.
Yep.
And here's what that means straight out: use a lot of chorus. Put your chorus on and put it up. They want a very
Oh,
chorusy sound. That's what Andy Summers was famous for. You know,
interesting.
another name I see on charts a lot is Freddie Green.
Yep.
Mm.
Many
Yep.
times. Just play your guide tones. short little stabby. It's all time feel, almost like you're playing a banjo. Similar. Not these big lush chord melody things with the same sound. He didn't even have an amp, right? You only heard him when the band died down. He was in there, tick, 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 tick. And orchestrators love that. You know, that comes up a lot. They like that because you're almost a percussion instrument at that point. You're not. There's so many people playing pitches that the chord is covered. The F sharp minor 755 is somebody's got all those notes. You just need jink, 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 jink. You know, you could almost not play a chord. The jink, 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 jink. And they go, hey, yeah, you sounded good. Yeah, I didn't hear anything bad over there. Yeah, it sounded good. If your time feels good. We're back to time feel again, right? Believe me, that sells a lot of things, you know, a good feel, a good time feel. In that world, I wouldn't recommend that. Play the chords if you see that, but it's the percussion is at the top of that totem pole for that style. Freddie Green. I'm seeing what other references do I get? I've seen, you know, a la Eddie Van Halen, that type of thing. Anything could happen.
It's interesting when you're looking at, or, you know, I'll talk to students about this too. It depends on who wrote the chart, you know, how much they know about guitar. And if they're not, whether they write even, now most of those shows, they're already worked out by then, but, you know, going into a session or rehearsal, if they write in the correct register. So you kind of have to have that flexibility to say, either play it where you think they want it and then ask, was that where you wanted it? But also just that thing of, you know, how much they know about guitar. They go, oh yeah, jazz is Freddie Green, or, you know, this kind of thing. It's kind of interesting trying to interpret that to get it, because, you know, what does the leader want or what does the writer want?
Yeah, and that's you know, I talk about that a lot because very few guitar players grow up to be orchestrators. They're almost all piano players. And the good ones can play some guitar, and they'll give you something that's pretty good. I got to work with Alex Lackamore. You know, he's an alum, orchestrator for Hamilton. I did a show that wasn't quite as successful that did his tryouts in Boston. I think it was 2006, called High Fidelity. But he was the orchestrator on that, and he's a very detailed writer for guitar. Some guys will give you some broad strokes and say, just here, go with this. But Alex was like, and he's got this brilliant mind and his musical brain, and he would write specific things. And if I didn't play them, he would kind of, Scotty, just the ink is, that's the saying too. The ink is good. That's a little saying. It's a way of being nice about it. Scotty, yeah, the ink is good on that. Let's go ahead and play the ink. But lots of times you have things that are not written by guitar players, and sometimes they're not even possible. You got out of range. You know, maybe they hit it, they clicked a thing in finale and dropped it down a half step. Now you got an E flat, low E flat. You can't play that. So a couple ways of handling that. And now it's like political now. You could raise your hand in the rehearsal and go, excuse me, you put an E flat in there. I can't play an E flat. Or you just don't say anything and just don't play the E flat. And we get the chart goes by and everyone's happy. And then, okay, let's move on. You know, there's a lot of people involved, a lot of moving parts with these orchestras, you know. So you want to, you know, and no one wants to be listening in on a discussion about the low E flat on the guitar player's part, you know. Just don't play the E flat or put it up an octave. It's your chair. You're sitting in the guitar chair. They want that from you. They want that from you. And here's the other thing too. This is something that I realized somewhat recently. Working with these orchestrators, they're up against the gun a lot of time. You do these break-in shows that are going to go to New York. They're writing the charts the night before. You rehearse them the next day, and they, just like us, they have to make decisions. The guy's sitting there. I got to give this guitar player something to play on this tune, and this is a thought process because I've spoken to them. Should we have him do this? Or we could do this. Would also sound good. Maybe we could just do this. You know, I got a deadline. I got to give him something. Here, play this. But what that means to me is that, okay, this part could have went a couple different ways. He had to decide on something. Maybe it wasn't etched in stone. So that gives me some wiggle room. So maybe if I change it here and there, using my instincts, you can get in trouble for this, depending on the orchestrator. You can come up with a pretty good part. You know, there's some wiggle room there because they're making decisions just like we are. We see it when it's in ink at the last stage, but there's room to interpret And if you can do it well, back to the time feel again, uh, you probably get away with it. But you got to feel that out. Like I said, Alex was not. He was like, "This is your part. You play it correctly or you don't. You nail it or you don't." That's kind of how it was. And luckily, he writes good things. He's very, very, very good. So and he's dangerous enough on guitar to give you some trouble. Like there was one chord he wrote and it was like, "You can't. I don't know. This isn't right." He goes, "Well, yeah, you can. You got to go up to the 12th fret and then play the open B string." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry. You're right." Like, oh, you're right. It's a beautiful chord. It's like, okay, note to self: don't question his chords anymore. But it's interpreting this ink blots on a page, and no one cares how well you read. It's not a reading test. It's like, how do you sound when you play it?
That's great.
You know, you
Yeah, I
know,
think that's important too, because this has come up in so many instances that there's how good you sound, and then there's also what the composer or the conductor needs you to do, or the
yeah,
leader of the band, or if you're the leader, how are you communicating what you need, or if you're the composer, how do you communicate what you need? So it's that idea that there's a fluidity there, and it's a spectrum that some people need and want to hear something really specific, and other people need you to come in and bring what you do, and they're more loose. And at
yeah,
different times when you're in that position, you may need or want either thing, and then you have to be able to effectively communicate that. So
yeah.
it sounds like we're
Flexibility.
yeah, I mean, and it also sounds like probably when you're learning it, there's some trial and error there, and you're like, well, okay, I know about this person now. I know what he wants, or I know what she wants. Or
Yeah,
if you're the leader, it also may be the reverse. Like, I thought what I wrote was clear, and clearly it was not clear, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting.
But
I'm wondering, when Larry gave you that key and sent you to the room,
we're going back
um,
there. Okay,
one of
all
the
right.
things that's interesting, like coming to this point, like where you've talked so much about all the things that you've done that were a continuation or a departure of the way you learned. In some ways, when you came to Berklee, you are now creating a curriculum based on your life that didn't exist for you when you were in college. So, how did that play in? How does your experience play into that? And how do you do that? Because um, you really had to build this curriculum for a lot of people who wanted to study rock, saying, like, okay, I'm a rock player and I have all this stylistic diversity. But it's not like you could say, oh, where's the rock curriculum? You had to kind of come up with it on your own. And I'm wondering how you went about that from your experience.
Well, just from artists that I emulated and admired and loved, and it's a standard list. I think it's probably won't be too unique. The Van Halens and the Jeff Becks and the Hendricks and some of the other players. Like, what would they do? How did they get their sound? What style, what kind of stink did they put on their notes, their theory that made it sound great and not like theory, not like a scale? What was going on there to bring it to life? That's what they did. Where they were coming from, I don't know, but I know what they achieved musically, and it's a heck of a target. What can we do? What can I do to get these people closer to that? And myself, I'm always striving for that. And maybe it's why I like the theater too. I get a certain kind of gratification from transcribing. And you could say, well, that's not original at all because yeah, I guess you're right. But I get a lot of pleasure from it when I hear something that I like and then I'm able to play it and I nail it sometimes. That's a great feeling. It's fun to have that freedom. Like, I'm going to play whatever I want, and creativity, and it's fantastic. But I get a special itch scratched when I kind of nail it, and I figure something out. And yes, I'm sounding like this guy, I guess, but it makes me happy. I know I like that's a good thing. I like this thing. I like to play it. Whether you can build a career on that, I don't know. You might probably have to change things up. But I think it's also why I don't have an issue with doing 8 shows a week. It's a challenge. The theater stuff, it's not easy. You don't just walk in and kind of like look around the room while you're playing these. It's like, coffee and there's a lot of goofing off, but not when we're playing. The hang is great. The guys, I love these guys that I work with. There's a lot of hanging before and after. But during, it's like I'm a guitar player trying to read. I turn into that guy, like, I got to make sure this is good. It's intense, and it demands a lot of respect. If you let your guard down, you could have an unpleasant moment, and in a heartbeat. Turn the page, something goes wrong. You pick up the wrong instrument. You pick up the ukulele instead of a banjo. That's not pleasant. It's not a good thing. So it's I guess it's repetitive by definition, but it's about, okay, am I gonna make it out alive tonight? Sit down. How's this gonna go tonight? You never know that. You never know that. Things go wrong on stage. Things go wrong here. People make mistakes. It happens. Conductors, do things. It's live theater. It's why people are drawn to it, I think, because that's what they're witnessing. It's not pre-taped. That's why the theater fills up. That's why people go. It's like, what's going to happen, So I enjoy that and I embrace that, and there is a certain comfort in, like, okay, I know how the show goes. I just got to execute it well tonight and go home and do it all again tomorrow. It's a certain kind of discipline, I think, to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. And now that we're kind of making these connections between teaching and playing, Ian, there's something that's generally on your mind when we get to this point.
Yeah. So there's a question that we ask everybody on this show, and that's what's, as somebody who's obviously been a student and now a teacher, been on sort of both sides of the teaching booth, what's something that you get a lot of students coming in or asking, and there's really something else that you're like, what you really should be thinking about is this? Like, what's a question that students might not think to ask that they should be thinking about?
How do I make this work for me? How do I make this work for me? How do I wear this thing that you're showing me and maybe put a spin on it? Maybe not. How do I make this work for me? And that is ultimately the path that's going to lead to your own voice. So that's a good question. That's the most simple answer I can come up with. Is this will pass. You need to, and you also need the patience again comes in a lot. Students tend to be impatient, like I was, but I just kept playing. I just kept playing and kept playing, and then 28 came around, and I started to get some traction. I could have bailed at 25 or 24 and said, this isn't happening fast enough. I quit. I didn't. It's perseverance and patience, and also there's no shortcuts. There's other thing. It's like there's no shortcuts. You have to put the time in. There's no shortcut to reading. There's no shortcut to learning how to improvise. There is time in, results out. Let's deal with it. And you know what? Nothing's easy. Nothing's really easy in the world. Just put that aside. I go, this should be easy. Music should be easy. It's not always easy. You got to work at it. Just expect that. Embrace it. I mean, of all the crappy things that can happen in your day, struggling with a guitar thing is really a pretty good day. That's a gift. That's a privilege to be struggling on guitar all day. Wow, that's a great day. You're gonna go out there. There's crap going on. That's terrible. But it ain't this. It ain't this. You're working on guitar, inside. The heat's on. Whatever. You're comfortable. That's a good day. That's a privilege. Not some people would want to be doing that and they can't for whatever reason. They decide not to. They can't because of this. It's easy to come up with reasons why not to do stuff, right? But that's a privilege to be able to do that. But that comes with patience and caffeine, which is kind of the theme of this chat here, isn't it? I mean, coffee helps with this stuff. Hello, yeah, I know. But it's about being patient, and it might go one ear and out the other. I don't know, but it's something that I believe, and just perseverance. You can't get results overnight. You can have lucky breaks, and things like that really change your trajectory based on your reputation. And I've had a few of those, several actually, that did not see coming, came out of the blue and took me into a whole nother zip code and a tax bracket, all that stuff. And it wasn't on my list of things to do today. I got a call or I got an email. I was like, what? Yes, I'll do that. And that comes from being around a lot and having a reputation where maybe someone will recommend you for something. That's a big part of moving a career forward, because you know, any kind of cool career thing that can happen is happening because another human being said yay or nay to you, either in front of you or not in front of you. Said, yeah, I recommend this guy. You looking for a dude? Call this guy, call this girl, whatever it is. Or they don't do that, and you'll
What was
never
one of
know.
those calls?
Um, the well, I got the first one was to go out to Vegas. An old college friend of mine saw me in a magazine, and it was my contact info, and he called me up out of the blue. He says, I'm the new music director for the show in Vegas. We're going to run for a year. Do you want to be the guitar player? He didn't ask me if I wanted to, you know, try out, or he said, do you want to move to Vegas? And at the time, it was 97, the blues scene was kind of dwindling down in the Bay Area. So I just went and did it. And that was a great year. It really was a fun year. It was a really fun show. Again, playing every night with great people. It was a fun show. It was a New York style show. It wasn't a typical Vegas show. So that was cool. That was one big thing. The other is I got a phone call out of the blue from this guy, Paul Gilbert, because I knew his drummer. And this was literally the call. He said, Scotty, do you want to come to Japan with me and do a live record? It was either a yes or no answer. It wasn't like, wait, are you available? It was like, do you want to do this? It was like, is this Paul? I don't know Paul. Why is he calling me? I did a record with a drummer, that his drummer, and he said, I want to take another guitar player with me. Do you know anybody? He said, yeah, check this guy out. Call this guy.
Hmm.
That's how I got that gig. And I think that the gig, the tour, I did a tour with Paul in Japan. We did a live record. I think that got me hired here, because that's when I called. After I did that, I thought, the folks over at Berklee might be interested in that. And I checked in with the office, and Rick called me right back and said, we have this guitar sessions thing. You want to give it a whirl? And I said, sure. And that was 21 years ago. So I turned that 3 weeks on the road to 20 years here, 21 years, whatever it is, here at Berklee. And it's also, and I was always thinking that way. This is great. This is awesome, but this is going to end in like 6 days. What can I do with this? Career wise, beyond showing up and doing what you need to do, where can I go with this? I wonder if Berklee would be interested in the fact that I played with this guy.
That's
And
great.
I think they were, so.
When you thought about quitting when you were 25, what made you stay?
Well, there's always you have those days. You always have those days where it's just not going well, and there's nothing in your future. You don't see anything concrete. There's just nothing that you're looking at your calendar, and there's nothing. How is this a life? What am I going to do? But I didn't know anything else. People ask me, when did you decide to go into music? And I don't remember ever doing that. This is probably a common story, but I didn't, I never sat down and go, let's see, I could be a chef, engineer, or a guitar player. Guitar playing thing is pretty fun. Let's do that. Let's try that. No, I just started playing when I was 10 and I never stopped. I don't remember deciding to go to music school either. I just ended up there. I really don't remember. Maybe someone forced me. I don't know how, but I just started playing and I never stopped. So I wasn't going to stop at 25 either. It was some rough times. But that call got me into Vegas. When I was on those rough times, that call out of the blue got me some really steady money over in Vegas. It was like nice bread. It was like, oh, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to do this. And that changed it got me out of California. And then I decided to go back to the East Coast. And then I heard from Paul. So that turned into that. It's kind of fun looking back on stuff because it's crystal clear. The future is always uncertain, right? And it's racked with insecurity. What's going to happen? What if this happens? This could happen. And you can draw lines all over the place. But it's kind of, and as I get older, I'm going to be 56 in about a week. I've really come to enjoy looking backwards and go, I was really lucky to be able to do that with those people. That was really cool. And that, and that, and that, I got this wonderful list of these incredible people. And you go, that happened, and then this happened. I can trace my whole career back to a letter that I got in 1988 that someone wrote to me. I was in a top 40 band in Miami, and then I was relocated to California, didn't know anybody, And I just got a letter from the singer in the band I used to play with. And said, there's an agent over there, and maybe give her a call. And she books top 40 bands. And so I called it, and I got into a top 40 band, and then I can trace my every single step to where I'm sitting today from that letter that she didn't have to write. She was just nice and said, there's an agent booking bands. Don't you give her a call? I wish I still had that letter, actually. And I've spoken. We found each other on Facebook not that long ago, and I told her that story. She's like, I don't remember writing that letter. You did, and thank you.
That's amazing. It's really true that when you're farther down the road, you can look back and see the thread, and you can see these moments that you realize were pivotal moments. When you're in it and you're young, you cannot see that. Not even a little. Not even a little. This has come up so many times. I think in this time that everyone has a little time off of seeing people and playing together. I think people are being more reflective. And also, it comes up all the time. Like, we were even curriculum planning the other day, and we were talking about, what are some classes that students think are valuable? And one of the comments I had was, well, you want to know, and then you also want to realize, like, what are all the classes you didn't think were valuable when you were 20 that turned out to be the one thing? I started writing letters a few years ago to teachers who I had thought, like, I can't believe I have to go to this class. I really want to practice. And then it turns out that choir or that ear training class or that music history, for whatever reason, was the reason that I ended up in the next spot. And I never would have guessed that. There's no way at 20 I ever would have known. So I think that's so cool. And it's also kind of scary, probably, if you're listening to this and you're 20.
Yeah. And those really has a lot of weight, those moments when you look back on them and go, wow, that didn't have to happen. That wasn't necessarily destined. It is now because it happened, but didn't feel that way, And, back to students, I'm not sure you're supposed to know what you're doing. That's the point too. There's a reason for all of this stuff, I believe. You're not supposed to know exactly what you're going to be doing. So you have to embrace that, and again, flexibility. I would go anywhere. If there was work, it wasn't my dream to live in Las Vegas, but there was work there. There was a great gig. I went there. I didn't think I'd be in Boston in the winter ever in my life, but I don't come here for the weather. I'm there's something in Boston, I'm moving to Boston, going, because I didn't know what was going on. I'm looking, I want something. I wanted some history to write, the opportunity. I don't want to say no, because that's not exactly what I was thinking would be perfect. It's great to have goals, that saying, the goals are great because they get you out of bed, they get you moving forward. But man, the things that actually turn into like career moments can be just out of the blue and in disguise, not necessarily, look at this awesome thing that's just happened to me. It could be like, I don't know, maybe should I do this or not?
It's funny.
Power of yes, we've heard that, right? It's
Yeah,
so
like
true.
I've actually also done a bunch of theater stuff too. And it's one of these things that, like, I would have never written that down for myself to be like, here's something I want to accomplish. Like, that's not like who picks up the guitar, when you're 12 years old and you want to, shred, you think, God, I really want to play for musical theater. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there are some folks out there now, that's cool, but like, it's something that's going to fall into your lap and then you go, wow, this is a lot of fun and it pays good,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah,
take
it's been
it
a joy.
and you appreciate it and you're like, holy crap, there's a bunch of things out there that you can do that you don't even realize that are out there. And it's really interesting to hear you talk about a lot of the things that you did, because I feel like, unfortunately, there are connotations about when people talk about the music industry, like people say, like, well, the music industry this, the music industry that, and it's like, it sounds like they're talking about, like, Michael Jackson. It sounds like they're talking about some famous person who's like a celebrity doing something, but in fact, there's all these people doing all of these things who you might not know who they are, but they're making it. They're great players. They're doing all kinds of cool things. They're having a residency at Las Vegas. They're touring with, say, Paul Gilbert. They're coming up with things. They're working on new musical theater stuff, like all these things that you're doing. And it's like people are really succeeding at it in places that, like, I don't often feel like is as highlighted when people sort of tend to say like the music industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, maybe not in the spotlight necessarily, but there's work to be had and music to be made. The world needs music. That's never going to end. And that whole thing about the music industry, I love that too. It's just like, well, the music business is really messed up right now. It really is. Blah, blah, blah. It's such a. Well, let me ask you, like, when was going into music like a sure thing? When did that happen? Was that the 70s? I want to make a ton of money. I think I'm going to take guitar lessons. No one says that. It was never a sure thing. It was always like you did it because you loved it. You started playing, and then you just, the history writes itself. That's what most people get into. They just start and they never stop. It's never a sure thing. Should I be a hedge fund manager or join a band? You know what I mean? It's like it's always been tricky, but that's what makes it great when you can get to that point and actually do something with it. There's nothing better in the world. Nothing, in my opinion. And we're all lucky to be a part of it, to see people doing it, to do it ourselves. It's a really incredible way to go through this time we have on this planet, to do something that you love. It's really kind of cool, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it's like, yeah, we're all very, very lucky, you know. And gratitude is also a great thing too. Not going to get into it. This is getting into like Anthony Robbins stuff now, but it's like, but gratitude is the key, man. If you appreciate what you have, regardless of what it is, if you can appreciate it, boy, that's a big load off your mind, isn't it? As you really value what you have, and it tends to come later in life for most people, I think, because they're always. And I was like that too, because okay, this thing was great. Okay, I did it. I did a good job. What's the next thing? I got my next, what's my next thing? That was cool. Now I look back and go, yeah, those are all cool things. It was very lucky. Any one of those could have slipped away or went to someone else or not happened. Or it's just sort of, wow, boy, am I the luckiest dude I know? I mean, everyone should feel that way. You know what I mean? It's like, boy, I just like, that was cool. That was cool. No regrets, of course. No regrets. No regrets. You know.
That's great.
And I was lucky. I had supportive parents. I just, my brother's a doctor. I have people in front of. No one was in music in my family, but my parents were thrilled that I wanted to play guitar. I'm not sure if I would be if my kid. I don't have kids. I just have a dog. But I'm like, really, you want to be a guitar player? I'm not sure how I would have that conversation. But my parents were maybe better people than I am. It's like, so that helped. They pushed me, and it was a nice thing. It worked out.
That's great. That's fantastic. Cheryl, what is on your mind as we're kind of coming to the end of the coffee with all of those things, all of these things that have come up?
Well, Scotty, thanks for coming by and sharing all that. I had questions that I was going to ask you, but you covered them just about that, the experience of doing theater stuff and all the styles you do in reading, the process of reading. I think that was incredibly helpful to students to see that it's a process. But also, I really appreciated your comments about, it took till you were 28, that it is a process. And we've all been that student where you just want it right now. But in retrospect, you look back. I mean, when I'm talking to students and they say, well, you have to transcribe this solo, like that's the best days of your life. Really, when you have that time in the shed like that to really get deep into things like that, transcribing and learning and stuff. So it's always, I know a lot of folks are going to get inspiration and also feel comforted on their path to hear your thoughts on that. That it's
Yeah.
a process, it's a lifelong, and it's an amazing process. It's, as you said, it's one of the best things we could do, spend our time on earth doing.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever look back and said, boy, I wish I hadn't spent all that time learning that solo. Not me, But, you never know. You will not regret putting that time in, because it will pay you back tenfold, especially if it's done consistently. I mean, it has to. Um, so it's time well spent.
That's right. Yeah. Ian, what about you? What else is on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot in there that, current students can take, and really feel, re-energized to continue to find joy in the playing and, why they're doing it, which is what we all need right now, right? And also the gratitude, in such a difficult time to be like, well, actually, as tough as it all is, like, you know, we're at Berklee, it's like one of the coolest places on the planet. Like, you can do music, you can study the kind of music that you like, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, in this time, I think we're all thinking about what we're doing and what we want to be doing. And I'm wondering at the end here, Scotty, is there any advice that you have either for students who are listening and thinking about what their life might look like next year, or for the three of us here with you in this hang about how we're thinking about the guitar department, as we start to emerge from this year?
I think my thoughts right now are really about the renaissance that's about to happen.
Mm,
There's going to be a musical renaissance because we've kind of been in the dark ages for about a year now. Live music has been taken away,
right.
but not for long. It's coming back, and it's going to come back stronger than what it was. So hopefully, everyone put their time to good use and is preparing because there's going to be a need for musicians. Festivals are going to be booked. Your favorite bands are going to come out with new records. They're all going to go on tour. There's going to be people looking for musicians now. We're on the cusp of a renaissance of music. I feel it in my bones, and uh, I'm not ashamed to be overly optimistic. I'll be that guy. And if it doesn't happen, you can come see me later and tell me I was wrong. I'm fine with that. But I see it coming. You can't just unplug everything like that and then just, oh, it goes away. Oh, no, no, no. When people are safe to go back to the theaters and the concerts, it's going to be an explosion. People have never needed it more. So, um, students, get ready to be working and playing. Get, practice and there's going to be opportunities, maybe more than before this started. I believe that. So be optimistic, and I think students are inherently optimistic. They're maybe more so than older people. I don't know, not to overgeneralize, but that's meant to be that way. I mean, you're reaching for the stars, you're going for it. And the fact that you're here means you're willing to take that chance and do it. So the rest is work. Don't be afraid to work. There is some kind of a mantra where you think, well, this is taking too long. It's too much work, and maybe it wasn't meant to be.
Mm.
And that's really dangerous. The good things are always work, time in. You have to put the effort in. I'm not sure there are shortcuts. And if you love what you're doing, what's the problem? There is none. There is no problem. You're learning guitar. You're working on guitar. Yes, it's challenging sometimes, and some days you won't win. The guitar will kick your butt some days. You're welcome. Yeah, good, good, good. You know, um, the future. There's going to be a lot of music in the future. It's coming. I mean, like the near future when we get
Hmm.
all this pandemic stuff squared away, and we're close. We're close. We're close. It's already starting. It's bubbling. Theaters are opening up. There's some things, distance performances. Okay, yeah, yeah. It's going to be a year. I don't know. I'm not going to put a time step on it, but like I know, like a year from now, things are going to be like really popping. But even before then, too, I think. Um, when it happens, when people are safe to go out and enjoy music again, there's going to be a lot of it, a lot of opportunities. That's what that translates into, in my optimistic view. Okay.
Well, I think if we know anything now, you know about hard work and you know about musicianship and you have good instincts. So I think everyone should listen and take your advice. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And this is a good one. This is one you're all going to want to listen to multiple times. So cheers, Scotty. Coffee cheers
Thanks
to
for
you.
having me.
Coffee
Yep.
cheers to Cheryl and Ian and to you listening. We'll see you next time and we'll hear you next time on Coffee Talk.